Wow, we're back, we're live, we're on LinkedIn, and you are joining us in episode 2 of our fantastic Sound of Music themed How Do You Solve a Problem with Maria and Gareth series. Maria, how are you doing today? Everything going well?
Yes. At least it's not raining, not like where you are.
That's awesome. Fantastic. And we're really excited about this particular segment because research promotion is something that we're really keen on. And if you're anything like me as a researcher, you wouldn't have bothered with this kind of thing. Like I never bothered really. I just didn't do anything. I just waited for stuff to happen to me with my publications, which obviously is the wrong strategy. The title of our event today, To Be Sung to the Sound of Music, theme tune, The Hills Are Alive, Altmetric is alive with people reading my paper, right, Maria? Any tips to get us going?
You're such... Oh my God, I will not be called Captain Von Trapp. No.
Awesome. And if you're listening to this on LinkedIn, welcome to our event, our live event, where we're going to talk about strategies for research promotion. You can ask questions, you can put comments, you can make criticisms of our singing when we get into that in a minute in the LinkedIn comments, and we'll see them here and we'll be able to respond. Let's get going as usual. My name's Gareth. This is the SciTrain LinkedIn. I'm joined by my good friend Maria Machado. We will be talking you through a roadmap for promoting your research today, right, Maria?
Yes. So the first important thing is how you're going to design your research. If you have any kind of deadlines you want to keep, any halfway points that you want to present data from, that would be great, because most of the time what I see happens is, especially in STEM subjects, PhD students are very keen to present their data at the last year, because that's when they have the most and they have done the analysis. But it's very important to start to get to known for what you're doing just before that.
Right. So building your reputation as a researcher within your field starts when you begin your PhD. And that's what we really mean when we talk about preparation on our roadmap to publication success. Before you start to write an article, it's very important to think about what you're going to be saying and also selling yourself. Don't be shy. Don't do what I used to do, and that's nothing when you're doing research. Talk about your research. Promote your research. Maria has a great blog. Let's learn about that for a moment, Maria.
So I share some of the things that I wished people had told me when I first started, and that is importance of doing things with a structure, having a plan for attending conferences, how to write abstracts, how to apply for funding, how to kind of organize what you're doing in chapters, which is important for when things go well, but also for when things don't go well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So preparing to write, selling yourself, capturing your editor's attention, having a clear structure. We talk about that a lot in our workshops and webinars as well. Building a clear structure to your academic writing, and then effective writing strategies as well. And if you'd like to learn more about the kind of workshops and webinars that we do provide at SciTrain, have a look at SciTrain, sci-train.com at the end of this event today. But let's talk to this slide, Maria. It's the impact roadmap, the kinds of things that you'll need to be thinking about if you want that piece of research that you're about to publish or talk about. You want people to cite it. You want people to read it. You want it to have maximum impact. What do we mean by that, Maria?
So you want to always keep in mind what's the ultimate goal of what you're trying to achieve. I know that for people immersed in their research, the doing of the thing and the ways that you do it, and the different ways that you can interpret something and present something is always very interesting. But for people not immersed in your full story, it's important to keep reminding them what is the impact of what you're doing, what are the outcomes, the short and medium-term outcomes, but also the long-term outcomes. Why do you think that what you're doing has importance for your field? Why is it important for the wider group of people, for society in general? So if you're doing something to do with a protein that's misfolded, for instance, why do you think that that may be important for other types of diseases that are not just the one that you're looking at?
So important. And we talk to PhD students all over the place, all of the time. People get very bogged down in their research. But if you're planning a project and you want that project to have maximum impact, have a look at the inputs at the beginning, like what societal challenge is your research addressing? Because you'll want it to have that bigger picture. What outputs are direct and immediate results that you can associate with the project, those outcomes, as Maria was talking about, the intended impact, how the work that you're doing, how the issue that you're addressing really has a difference or is going to make a difference to society, and then your intended impact against those societal goals. So not just the research project itself and the outcomes of that from a research perspective, but what's the bigger picture? Why are people around the world going to be interested in learning more about your research? And so we've got this graphic here that we took from our good friends at Fast Track Impact. Do have a look at their website, fasttrackimpact.com. Maria, this is great, right? This is fantastic. If you're going to be putting together a project or maybe a grant application, this kind of impact as a journey graphic is absolutely fantastic, isn't it?
Yes, because that's mainly one of the things that you want to be thinking about when you're first starting out a project is, what is it that you could realistically achieve within the time and the budget that you have? And what is something that is going to last the course of the project, and it's going to keep being reminded to you, but you're never really going to be able to grasp until the very end. So sometimes whenever you develop something and you develop a project in biology, the way that you do things and the methodology that you come up to analyze something, for instance, is more valuable in the short term than what you've achieved. But later on, the results that you have may be quoted and cited by other publications. So it's always a good idea to remind yourself that what you're doing has impact at different stages, and you may still be cited a long time after you've published your paper.
Absolutely. And we're getting some engagement on LinkedIn. It's great to see so many people joining us for this event today. I use this slide all the time in workshops. Fasttrackimpact.com, by the way. Don't get angry with me for stealing it from your website. This is fantastic, especially for grant applications, for planning projects, for putting together a roadmap that demonstrates to whoever's important, the funding agency, your employer, your university, your government, that you're thinking more about the impacts of what you're doing, what inputs you have there, what activities you're going to be carrying out over the course of the research project, what do the outputs look like, the outcomes, and most importantly, those impacts. And I know you think this is the case too, Maria, but most researchers don't really think about the overall impact of their research, do they?
I think that they think about it as something that you're supposed to do, like something that you're supposed to talk about at the discussion of your paper. But at times, not everything that you think is obvious is there. So I see a lot of people doing preclinical research and saying this could be developed into therapies for whatever it is. And most of the time, they don't even think about the possibilities for diagnosis, for other research to be developed from what they've done, for structural biology, for anatomy, for knowledge sharing in other projects. They immediately go to the therapies and curing a disease, but that may not be the sole outcome that comes up. And most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's a long-term outcome because it takes that much time. but what you did and what you learned in the meantime may benefit other people.
Most people, I mean, I get it, right? Some fields of research are easier than others to come up with that impact about.
Yeah.
Like I'm working like on dinosaurs. That's easier. I get that, to come up with stories that will engage like people outside of the field in the research. But this is the secret to getting your work into those high impact factor journals, thinking broadly about what you're working on and why it's important for the lives of everyday people, and why your research can make a difference, can make an impact to more than just the 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 people working in your specific research area who are going to want to read your paper. So this is actually about storytelling, right, Maria? Like developing that skill set to talk about your research and tell a story. So tell us a story, Maria.
So one of the papers that I reviewed, actually, that I thought was one of the best in this specific way, was about fish. So the authors were studying a specific type of fish and how they were related to each other in a niche environment in the Pacific somewhere. And from that, they could extrapolate that the divergence between the fish could be able to tell them something about the weather conditions, so they could foresee some sort of impact of overall climate change and overall rise in temperature of the Earth nowadays, in how fish are diverging evolutionarily from each other, how they're diverging in some places and how they're converging in others. So I thought that was a great way to link two things together and to show immediate impact on something that may not be apparent for most people.
That's amazing. So they didn't just write a paper about how different fish are interrelated. They broadened it. They looked at the bigger picture. They found a hook, a story upon which to hang their research in a bigger context. I mean, I used to work in Ireland, and I worked with people who were working on sediment cores from Irish lakes, and they were always just publishing their work in the Journal of Irish Limnology, which for the uninitiated is the Journal of Irish Lake Studies.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty boring, right? But if you actually have 1,000 or more years worth of continuous sediment cores from a particular lake, well, then there's a bigger picture story that you can tell with those data. You can talk about bigger picture issues. I think it's really, really important. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you can promote your research, how you can celebrate it. Give us some insights, Maria. Maybe you've got some tales of woe from international conferences and so on.
So I first went to an international conference on my own with nobody else from my research group, not even my supervisor. And it was eye-opening because I had people ask questions in a not very friendly manner on why I was doing what I was doing, and if it wasn't all completely done already, and what was the novelty of what I was doing. And I really had to think about, in the second year of my PhD, why was I doing what I was doing? It was a whole spiel, but that enabled me to start writing things in a different way, and it got me interested in figuring out different ways of science communication. So whenever we talk about social media there, one of the best ways that I find information about novel, impactful, interdisciplinary research most of the time is through blogs. People that have written the papers then write a blog intended for the general public or for the public of that specific publication, but not for hardcore scientists, right? So they explain to most people why they did what they did, what's novel in what they did, and why people should invest time in reading their academic paper.
It's so important to prepare to talk about your research. So don't do what Maria maybe did and just went to a conference and didn't plan it beforehand, who you're going to meet, what you're going to talk about, what your pitch is going to be, because basic data actually shows that if you talk about your research in a way that other people can understand. So in a popular science communication way, if you blog about your research, if you make podcasts about your research, if you make videos or plain language summaries, if you do something to spread the word about your research before, during, and after publication, then you can increase the readership, the citations of your article many, many times. And that's definitely the case, right, Maria? We know examples of where, oh, well, there are hundreds of examples of how this can actually work.
Yes, I think that one of the main things is to be aware that you are embedded in a community, right? So one of the things that, well, we just had peer review week, right? So there were lots of people talking about how to academic publishing and scholarly communications. And one of the best things that I read was there's so many outputs, there's so many things happening during peer review week, you really don't know where to go. So the best thing is to have a summary, to have someone grab titles and figure out what it is that have a centralized output of everything that you do, and then you just go and specify what you want to look at. So the London School of Economics blog just published something that they had content on peer review for, I don't know, this year, last year, I don't know how long for, but they packaged it for peer review week and they put it in a nice little bow. And lots of people will be reading it, I'm sure, because it's timely, because it's something that people are looking for right now. And that's one of the main things. Like if it is, today is the International Day of the Animal, I think. So if you're doing vet research, then promote it today.
Wow. Is it really? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that as well. I just
wow.
got something about my cat.
And you promised you wouldn't talk about peer review week. We're still traumatized from peer review week last week. But yeah, if you joined us during last week, you'll have learned a few things, hopefully, about peer review. But as Maria said, like one of the best ways to get into that information is to now go and read some of the summaries, some of the plain language summaries that have been put out, for example, by the London School of Economics on their blog. And the point of doing this event really is to encourage people to develop those strategies for engagement, to talk about your research, to promote your research in as many effective ways as possible in order that you can get more reach, that more people will read your papers, more people will cite your papers, and your branding, your reputation, your personal brand as a researcher will be enhanced. And the key to this is developing strategies to talk about the value of your research, as we've been discussing already in this event. And quite frankly and fundamentally, this is necessary if you've been funded by your university or by a government or by a research grant. You need to justify the funding that you've received. So public engagement, science communication is critically important, right, Maria, in order to justify the money that you may have been given for your research project, fundamentally.
Yes. So at the end of a research project or of a funding cycle, most of the time you have to write reports stating what's the importance of what you've been doing. And for me, it was really quite important to state that I had been awarded prizes and whatever it is for during my academic career for presenting research and for promoting research, because that was one of the ways that you would get engagement. I was doing very basic research that didn't have immediate translational or therapeutic applications. So it was important for me to tell the funding body, which was weirdly an engineering funding research, why my research was important, why it was being acknowledged by my peers, that it was something that could bring value potentially, and that would be published, and that would lead other people to build on what I had done. So that's terribly important. Yeah.
we have workshops on this. We have webinars on this. So if you're listening to this and thinking, well, I'd like to learn more, you can just get in touch with us. We'd love to do a workshop or a webinar in more detail on this specific to your team or your university's research topic. I mean, it's really, really, really important. I can't emphasize enough how you should not be like me and just do nothing about your research promotion, because, you know, attending conferences is key, promoting your published article, networking with other researchers, and identifying new trends. Maria, have you been at any conferences recently? Have you been doing any research promotion?
Well, I think that we did go to London Book Fair. It was a thing that we did because of peer review. And that's one of the things that is important to do. You have to talk to other people who are interested in the same things that you are, because they will have different insights that you do. This is applicable in academia and everywhere else. Every kind of industry has their own get together and their own important trends and their own things that they care about and are being developed and are changing. And it's important to know that you have some sort of support from your network in your way forward, in that you're doing the right thing, kind of, that it's not just your direct boss or your direct competitor that you have to deal with. You have larger network.
How do you build a network, Maria?
Well, especially if you're in a niche area, it's very important to go online to know your social networkings.
Even for middle-aged people like me, we can still network online.
Middle-aged people like us. So you do have several ways of reaching people. And of course, most people are like me. They saw the inception of ResearchGate and we really, really went for it, because it was one of the few things where you could publicize your research, that you could tell other people in the same field as you, I just published this and this may be interesting for you, and see other people's publications before they went through all of the normal, you know, citations and indexing channels. And you could then know, if you went to any conference and you followed someone's poster or abstract or presentation, you could know when they published their paper. You could know that it had been peer-reviewed. You could know that you could now cite with ease the information that you would learn from them.
ResearchGate, it's fantastic. The check's in the mail, I'm sure, from the guys at ResearchGate. Other academic networks are, of course, available as well, like academia.edu. But people also network, of course they do, on standard, like generic social media platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, depending on your region, WeChat, all of those places. But it's very important as a researcher to identify that niche, as you mentioned, Maria, identify where other researchers in your field are networking online, so that you can make sure that you're a member of that network and that your research, your ideas before, during, and after publication, as you build your impact, are disseminated with that community. Get your Altmetric score, your readership score up by doing that, right?
Right. And Reddit. Reddit is very important for the tech nerds among us. So yeah, just if you have, don't forget that if you have an ORCID, you could always link it to your GitHub as well.
You're speaking a different language. ORCID, GitHub, Reddit. What are you on about, Maria?
We will let you know in a minute.
Writing a highly cited paper, though, we've put together like a number of tips as we're coming towards the end of this event today, but we do have some tips for you if you're listening to this and you do want to get your citations up. Don't worry, like we've got much longer events, webinars, training. If you'd like to learn more, you can, of course, get in touch with us at SciTrain. But writing a highly cited paper is going to be all about accessibility. It's going to be about how you disseminate that research, that publication, before, during, and after the paper comes out. And it's also about your own academic authority, which we talked about in terms of networking. But Maria, just get us started, as we have these 12 steps, 12 tips for writing a highly cited paper here on this slide.
So, first of all, to choose keywords carefully. Keywords are really important for indexing your paper in most aggregators and most search engines. So you need to be aware of the ones that are most used and the terminology that is most used in your field and in the people that you want to reach. Also, use the same name on your papers. So if you have an ORCID ID, if you have an institutional email, you can sign up for an ORCID ID. It will give you a 16-digit number that is specific to you. And then you can link other emails to it. So whenever you move institution, for instance, you can take it with you. It's very important that if your name changes throughout, that your ORCID remains the same. This is quite valuable for sometimes ladies that get married and get their names changed, and for other people that should wish to have their names changed.
Yeah, like I was going to change my name to Julie Andrews before this event, but like I've published papers, Gareth Dyke, Gareth J. Dyke, GJ Dyke, Gareth. It's really important. And we keep mentioning all of these other academic partners, ResearchGate and so on. But, you know, ORCID is critical. Really, you should have an ORCID ID, right, Maria?
You should always, because it's one of the trust markers that people, it's like you have your own publication list online, and it's cited and it is referred to by other institutions. So external people can link to your ORCID, and then they can provide references. So cross-ref, whenever you have cross-ref or PubMed, getting references to your papers, then you know that you could trust that researcher, that it's the same person that they're claiming to be. Right. To disseminate and promote your research, we've talked a lot about that. And to cite your previously published papers, it's, of course, if it's within the remit of what you're writing, right? But if you are continue on a specific field or subject, it's likely that you've continued to do research in a field that uses techniques that you've used before, that uses research that results that you've created before, or that some way you've learned from past mistakes. And that is always good to acknowledge.
Right. And learning from your past mistakes is really, really, really important. Yeah. Citing your previously published papers, not too many though. Publish in journals that other people in your field read, publish in open access journals, write review papers, but you know, that's not the same as a literature review. And if you're confused about that, get in touch with us. We'll absolutely be providing, or we have provided, lots more content, lots more information on that. Submit to special issues, but within reason, and that's a whole separate kettle of fish. We won't be talking about that and all of the dodginess that's been going on in recent years around special issues. I recommend working with other people. That's how I managed to publish lots of papers. Collaboration is really important and really key, right? Wouldn't you say, Maria?
Yes, it's very important. And it also is a great learning opportunity because it teaches you to speak to people in their language, or at least in a language that both understand. And so it gives you a different insight on your own results as well. And that's always quite good to get you out of your head.
Absolutely. On the promotional channels thing, I see Julian is making a great point on LinkedIn. Like, it's possible then to use those promotional channels to identify where people in your field are individually or inside, where they are inside those research dedicated communities. So thanks for that fantastic comment, Julian. Higher impact factor journals if possible. How can I publish my work in a higher impact factor journal? Bigger picture, larger picture, like looking at the wider impact of your research. So you're not going to get a paper in Nature if you just talk about lake sediments from an Irish lake, but you might get a paper in a high impact factor journal like Nature if you talk about the bigger picture of those sediment cores from that Irish lake and how those might relate, for example, to climate change. Or Maria's example about fish, evolution of fish, pretty boring in its own context, but if there's a bigger picture hook talking about, you know, again, temperature change, climate change, that's also really important. Do get in touch with us. We've got like lots and lots and lots of presentations, events, workshops, further training on these particular topics. But I think above all, most of this is just about how you communicate about your research, right, Maria?
Yes. So one of the main things that people forget is that you need to do the research, you need to write it properly, and to write it properly, it's a skill in itself, because academese is not English. And then you have to be able to communicate it to many different people, not just the ones that you think are the ones that will be interested in what you do. Try and explain to your mom what it is that you do. This is always a good way. My mom still doesn't know what I do. So
you haven't explained it properly then, probably, have you?
I haven't explained it properly. No.
I always think about my granny or the bus driver. Like when I take the bus, and can I explain like what I'm going to be working on today to the bus driver? Very common interview question, by the way, in PhD interviews. How are you going to explain what you're going to be working on for your PhD to somebody that you're sitting next to in a cafe, or the bus driver, for example? So do keep that in mind. And I think we're running up against our time today for this event, Maria, but we'll just say thank you everybody for listening to this LinkedIn Live, second in our series of How Do You Solve a Problem with Maria and Gareth. Maria, thank you so much for being here. Have a great day.
Please don't sing.